Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Each week, we hear real time stories from athletes and CEOs on how to maximize performance through an endurance mindset. Let's get started. So, I'm super thrilled to introduce our guest today. He is an impressive founder, investor, and athlete. He's founded a tech platform revolutionizing how investment teams and fundraising entrepreneurs work together through collaboration, automation, and data. He's completed 30 consecutive Boston Marathon finishes, starting in 1996 after being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1995. To celebrate his 30th running and living with type 1 diabetes, he ran the Boston Marathon backwards from finish to start and then around from start to finish, clocking over 52 miles. It is my pleasure to welcome Jason Burke. Jason, welcome to the show.
Greg, thanks for having me. This is a topic I think a lot about, so I'm excited for this chat.
Fantastic. Well, as you know, we love talking about the endurance mindset. So, Jason, how has your endurance mindset impacted your life unexpectedly?
Yeah, so Greg, I'll start with the story. So I grew up just outside of Boston, and as a kid, I did what most Waltham kids did. I played baseball and soccer, and I I am personally very competitive with myself. And when I got to high school, I recognized that, one, as a smaller guy, I wasn't going to be able to be an elite athlete at those sports. So I ended up falling into running sort of by default, and started running track. And I knew that was a place I could excel because I could control my own destiny. I could train when I wanted to. If any failures I had in competition were, really, mostly on me. So I was training mega mileage. In my junior year of high school, I ran my first Boston Marathon as a bandit, and was planning to run my second Boston Marathon my senior year. The Boston Marathon's in April. So I was training throughout the winter, throughout the cold Boston winter for that race. Lots of mileage. I was really ready to run a great time at that marathon. And at the race is in April. In March, I started to be really tired and super thirsty, urinating all the time, to the point where these weren't normal symptoms. But I still was. I was in denial. Telling myself that this is the training. This is just part of the game. I was training a lot. And the weekend of the Boston Marathon, I took the train into Boston for the expo, and passed out on the train on the ride back, and told my parents that night, all right, we have to go. We have to go to the hospital. We have to see what is going on. I came into the hospital with a 960 blood sugar reading. So just by comparison, normal blood sugar is between 70 and 110. Back to your question around endurance mindset, the doctor said I should not have walked into the hospital. The only reason I was alive was my level of fitness. So it was something it was early into my running career and endurance career, but it was something that saved my life. And while no one wants to have a chronic disease, this is one where I can control it myself, or at least I can have an impact on it. Staying in shape and watching what I eat, and paying attention to my health, and controlling that. And again, that comes back to endurance as well. Is that you live a long life. You have to have this level of discipline, to both train for athletic events as well as train to keep your body healthy.
Jason, you brought up a really good point. It's one of the benefits of being an endurance athlete is knowing and understanding your body, right? And listening to your body as you train or as you perform. And the question that I was thinking about when you were telling that story is, as now you look back at those days, was there anything in particular that your body was trying to send you the message that you just sort of gutted through or wanted to ignore, and then ultimately while on that train and passing out and ending up in the hospital. But kind of thinking about the time before that event, were there things that your body were telling you that now that you're more aware, uh, were either a sign or some sort of indication?
Yeah, it's actually I don't have an answer to that because it was somewhat a mystery. This came on, fast and furious. The doctors didn't know why. This isn't something that ran in the family. But once those symptoms start, those symptoms are very, very obvious. It was just I was in a mindset of I was running a lot, and it was very easy to be in denial. So I was in denial. These were symptoms that were screaming, the body screaming at you, saying, something is wrong here. And what it was is the body wasn't breaking down the sugar, and it was getting to, toxic and near fatal levels. And that's what those symptoms are trying to tell you. I just wasn't listening to them.
You know, a few years back, I had a pulmonary embolism that I luckily obviously got in front of, but it was because of my endurance training that I was like, you know what, something's just not right. Right. I'm walking up these stairs. I'm out of breath. I got to lay down after I do 10 steps. And eventually reached out to a now friend and a doctor, and he's like, let's just start taking care of the big things. And, hearing your story sort of reminded me of of the benefit and I don't know, just having appreciation for this endurance mindset.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those, for what you went through, what I went through. At least you were listening to your body. You talked to your friend. Not that I was ignoring my body, but I was coming up with excuses. But now going forward, Greg and Jason will never do that. You make a mistake once, and you tend to not make that mistake again, and that certainly applies to what we're talking about with health. But I see this every day with business. We're all making mistakes in what we do. What we do across life, but within business. And sometimes you need to make that mistake such that you learn and avoid making that mistake in the future.
100%. So I imagine, Jason, that your training nutrition has to be super dialed in, given a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. Can you talk to us a little bit about like what you do, how you prepare, what are some extra steps that you have to go through?
Yeah. So, one good thing is that innovation keeps making things better. So when I was diagnosed in 1995, I was testing my blood sugar, and it would take 45 seconds to test. I would prick my finger, put the blood on a strip, and 45 minutes later, a meter would tell me. We fast forward 30 years, and now there's continuous glucose monitors, which are, I'm wearing one, and that is continuously reading blood glucose levels, and not only telling me what my blood glucose level is, but communicating that to an insulin pump, the same way that a non-diabetic's body is telling the pancreas, give Greg more insulin or pull back. So technology is helping with that, but you're right. There is this isn't on, and I'm not sure we'll ever be there, but the body can never be, or technology will never allow for autopilot. So it does require monitoring what you're eating, how much you're sleeping, and how that marries with things like exercise and stress and sleep. It's I tell a lot of other type 1 diabetics who run or do endurance sports who are trying to figure out how to make it work. And I tell them that, one, it's a hard game. Just like entrepreneurship, it is a hard game. Know what you're getting into with entrepreneurship. Not that you have a choice with something like type 1 diabetes, but just go into it knowing that this is not necessarily going to be easy. There are tools like the technology that I'm mentioning that are making things infinitely better. But things will be difficult. But one thing I tell folks, especially when they're running their first marathon and concerned about, I don't want my blood sugar to drop. What am I going to do? How am I going to eat? You know, the standard answer applies, which is, practice,
Yeah.
on the weekends during your long run, practice eating different things, do these trial runs in advance of race day. But the other thing I say is that we're never going to be perfect. I have now run 80 marathons, and every single time I feel like I'm winging it. You would think that after a number of these, like you said, you'd have it dialed in. This is what I'm going to. I'm going to wake up at a certain time, eat a certain amount. But there's just so many variables at play with respect to the human body. Not only the things you think about, which is, make sure you eat enough, and you're going to be running between 3 and 4 hours. But the weather, how much did you sleep in the week before, stress, all of those things come into play, which is the reason why I also believe that from a technology point of view, that there is a lot of opportunity for companies to be building improvements to human products that improve human health using data and technology. Because none of us as human beings, even if you've gone to many years of medical school, no human brain can take in, thousands of inputs and make a calculation on something so variable as the human body. But that said, yes, someone who has a disease like type 1 diabetes is generally very aware of how these things impact their day-to-day life.
Absolutely. You brought up a couple times entrepreneurship, and I was dying to ask, or curious to ask, is your involvement in angels and investing in companies sort of driven by that desire for technology and innovation? Is it somewhat driven by the technology development that you've seen over the last 30 years as it comes to type 1 diabetes and some of the tools that you're using, or is it just happenstance that those two journeys are side by side?
Yeah, it is just happenstance. I mean, where you can draw some parallels is they talk about the loneliness of the long distance runner. Much of the training you're doing is in the morning before anyone else wakes up. No one knows you're out there. If you want to sleep through your alarm, that's your fault. You're the one who has to have the discipline to get up. You're the one who has to have the no quit attitude to keep going when it's raining and you're tired. The same thing with entrepreneurship. It is it's a lonely place and it's a very hard job, but that is something, just like marathon running, it can be a lonely place when you're out on a 20-mile run, you're 15 miles in and you're feeling like crap. So you just have to power through that. So I think those two, those two feed me personally. Those challenges feed me to do what I do with running and to do with what I do with building a business. As somebody who is building a business and as somebody who invests in other startups, and someone who's seeing the possibilities that exist with new technology and the way it can improve human health. That's where that sort of ties in. And myself as I'm also an investor, an early stage investor, and that is one of my an investment thesis is that product and data will improve human health, and we'll start to see more and more companies building towards that, which will be which will be a win for all of us in humanity.
Absolutely, and please keep investing in that because the rest of us are beneficiaries. Jason, I'm wondering, you're at mile 15 on a long run. Nobody's watching. You're just beaten down. You don't want to finish out your workout. Do you have a life hack that kind of gets you past that next mile or that next foot forward that you can share with the audience?
So this will be a fun story. It doesn't tie into the long distance, but the sort of just get up and don't feel bad for yourself does play in with this. So I ran cross country in college. I went to Tufts University, school outside of Boston, and we had a a race up in Maine in the fall on a golf course in Maine. About a mile into it, was running down a hill, passing a teammate, and got bumped really hard. Flipped literally head over heels, landed on the ground, and the rest of the race ran past me. I was on the ground holding my head. My head was ringing, and everyone ran past, and I didn't know. I assumed my teammate had bumped into me, and everyone ran past, and I got up about 45 seconds later and said, well, I could walk back to the finish area, or I can just get up and keep going. Like, why not just keep going? And I'm somebody who I have little patience for not or for feeling bad for yourself. And I didn't want to feel bad for myself. It is what it is. I fell. I might as well finish this race. So finish the race, and uh, turns out, not relevant to your question, but turns out the what happened when I was bumped, I was run into by a deer. A deer had had been running across the course. Two deer had come across the course. One hit me in the hip, and that's what caused me to flip over. The rest of the people in the race saw that happen, still ran past me, so I still give them a hard time. But it was more around, it's the old saying, if you fall down, get back up. And that's what you need to do in, that 15th mile of a long run. That's what you do in, if you get hit by a deer in a cross country race, or that's what that's what you do when you're building a business and a customer that you've been selling into ghosts you, or a customer churns and you lose that customer. You just have to keep going and, use that as a learning experience so that, next time you're stronger.
100%. Is there something across your childhood or your earlier years that taught you that mentality of just get back up and keep fighting?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of that's what I was brought up with within my family. So we, a number of people in my family have health challenges. They don't let that stop them. That is, yes, it's a challenge. Yes, it's a speed bump. It prevents them or me from doing certain things. But I also think that those are the sorts of things that that make you stronger. So that when you're on that 15th mile of a run and you're feeling really bad, you've calloused yourself over time through challenges, whether they're health challenges or just the hills you've gotten over, with challenges in your life that just make you a stronger person, so that your mind doesn't go to the place of quit. Because it is very, very easy to quit with whatever that challenge is, whether it's, athletics or, something work related. It's very easy to quit. And that happens on a, multiple times per week or a daily basis as an entrepreneur. Most of, if an entrepreneur is fundraising, most of the answers are going to be no. Most investors, that's just the way the game is played. Most customers in the early days are going to say, no, I don't want what you're building, or you're building the wrong thing. And it takes just powering through that and continuing to move forward. That all said, as an entrepreneur, you also need to know, you need to know when to hold them and keep going. You also need to know when to fold them. And that's not it's not easy to know when, what that is a very fine line. But that said, the former is really important, is that these, entrepreneurship, endurance athletics is a very hard game. You signed up for this, and this is the way it is, and part of that is knowing how to keep going even when you don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, the question that came to mind when you're sharing that, and in particular talking about when to hold and when to fold, have you recognized any patterns across entrepreneurs of kind of when they've gone too far, or is there a special indicator that's like, what, I've just arrived at place A and I should not be here anymore. I got to pivot and make a big change. Is there a way to kind of know when to fold it or when to change direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's similar to the story I was telling around being ignorant to the symptoms that my body was screaming about. It's entrepreneurs, for reasons of trying to do something very hard and innovate and break the rules and create something that's never been done. Um, they naturally have to be ignorant to all the no's that are happening. So that's it's really tight tunnel vision that is both a pro and a con. It's a pro because you have to have that tunnel vision. You have to block out that. But at the same time, it's a con because sometimes you may keep going and not, when it might be best to stop or might be best to pivot. So I think a lot of that comes down to being open to feedback and talking to others. As an entrepreneur, you're thinking about the problem that you're trying to solve 25 hours per day. Your colleague, even a fellow founder who's building her own company, she's not. She's thinking about what she's building, and sometimes someone like that brings a perspective that you're blind to because you have such strong tunnel vision. So it's that is that's something I encourage a lot of founders to do is find a community of fellow founders, of folks who have done that, who have fought that battle before, because they'll see around corners that you just simply aren't allowing yourself to see given the position you have.
100%. I'd love to change topics a little bit and talk about your business, your technology platform, and talk about Allstage. Give us a flavor of what that is.
Sure. So Allstage is a invest tech platform. So that means technology and products for investing in fundraising. The way this came to be is that 5 years ago, I co-founded an angel group out of Boston with 4 or 5 other friends, and we had a thesis that if we can bring together a bunch of investors from different backgrounds, different industries, different areas of functional expertise, and we could collaborate together, then we can make better investment decisions together than we could on our own. We started the group, started to see hockey stick growth on both membership growth as well as deal flow, and realized that's much easier said than done. Just bring together a bunch of people and all of a sudden snap your fingers and now we're investing like Warren Buffett. In order to do that, or in order to attempt to execute on that vision, we couldn't do that with sending around PDFs and links to Dropbox and all of the friction that's involved that we all know about with sharing data and trying to gain consensus across many people. So we needed product for that. So it started out as this was directly in the middle of COVID. It started out with my building, essentially hacking together a solution from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. after my kids went to bed. And that was solving the problem that we had at TBD Angels, a tool for us to manage all the activity that happens within an angel group of 300 investors. And fast forward 5 years, that has now been spun off as a standalone business into Allstage. So Allstage is that invest tech platform that has a product for investment teams, like an angel network that I was just describing. It's also used by accelerators and corporate venture arms to allow collaboration amongst many investors. And we have products for founders. And there's a lot of relevant touch points between those two products, given that founders are raising from investors, investors are investing in founders. So there's a lot of interesting things that can be done to sort of create some connective tissue, more connective tissue between those sides, because generally fundraising, investing is a very transactional process. And the reality is that when an investor invests in a startup, especially an early stage startup, most of what they're deciding to invest in is the person, not the product that they built to date, not the market, not the metrics, which are probably minimal, since the company is early, but they're investing in the person, and that really requires those people knowing each other and interacting with each other. So that's sort of what our product is enabling, is enabling all that process that happens, as well as the collaboration between the people.
That's awesome. So a founder, would they go on your platform to find their angels, to find their angel network? Is it a matchmaking platform as well, or is it truly just a communication collaboration tool?
So it is the latter today, and that is by strategic design. Recognize that investment teams, whether it's an angel group or VC firm or corporate venture arm, they lack tools to make decisions on investing and removing that friction amongst those investors on the team. Also recognize that founders lack the right tools to share their deal with Greg and be able to answer Greg's question and do this in a way that removes friction for Greg as an investor, because his inbox is full and he has hundreds of founders getting in touch with him. So if you can make it easier, then you're way ahead of the game as a founder. So we have tools that are being used by founders to help them run a successful fundraising process, tools for investment teams to help them make decisions and use data to facilitate that process and make those decisions. And I think you're sort of reading between some of the lines and peeking into what that product roadmap may be around, if Allstage is powering founders and investment teams, there's an opportunity to, connect Jason, who might be building an InvestTech platform, with Greg, who's looking to invest in companies building, technology for investing with founders that are in the Northeast, and using all of that data to play matchmaker. But that is a very a highly nuanced product to build. Conceptually, it makes a lot of sense. Conceptually, both sides wants the other side, but it's highly nuanced. So spending a lot of time thinking about like what that product looks like, but also just how does that new concept make its way into this market?
Sure. That's super helpful. Anything in particular that your angel group is interested in? You've got an audience member that's got a tech business or a healthcare business, or, is there a specific niche or industry that you guys are focused on? Or are you pretty agnostic?
We are agnostic by design. I was talking earlier about the origin story of TBD Angels, and one of those pieces was, as I was describing, we if we can bring together a bunch of people from different backgrounds, different industries, and different areas of functional expertise, and that is giving us all the puzzle pieces, all the knowledge and networking puzzle pieces to evaluate opportunities and ultimately make better investment decisions when we can, put those pieces together. What it also does is that it diversifies our deal flow. If Greg and Jason are part of this group, they both come from different areas of the country, they have different backgrounds, they come from different industries. Our own deal flow, the founders we know and might bring into the group are likely very different. So that, brings a lot of diverse deal flow. And, selfishly, we, as the founding team, also wanted to see more diverse deal flow. I, along with a few of the other founding members, had spent a lot of time in advertising technology. That was the last thing we wanted to see with deal flow. But we started seeing deals from some of our members in areas that, like, I personally would have never run into that founder, so I probably never would have encountered that opportunity because I don't run in the same circle as that founder. Or even if I did know that founder, if they're building something in a space that I don't know, I probably wouldn't invest if I was making decisions as an individual angel investor. But with essentially a team of folks from different backgrounds, we can gain conviction from the perspectives of our peers, and Allstage is fortunate enough to be one of the pieces of that puzzle, helping all of those investors, collaborate in that way.
So you're standing in front of a room full of potential founders, entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs. They're stuck in their cubicle at some big corporation like I was 1,000 years ago. What's the piece of advice give them, and how would you motivate them to actually get out and do their own thing?
Well, I think this advice applies throughout history, but it certainly is magnified today in that the tools exist for you to do this. Similar to the way that Jason started to build all what became Allstage on his couch after the kids went to bed. Go and build something. The tools now exist. We're obviously seeing huge advances in technology with innovation around AI. But AI aside, the tools exist for you to build something. Figure out a problem that you have as an individual. So Greg is always looking for. Greg might always be looking for a route, a biking route each morning. Build an app that allows you to plug in your location and your preferences around. I want to avoid hills and I want to be in the shade. And build an app that is an app, not a product, and not a business, and certainly not a venture scale business. But that's how you get started. Is you take these small steps and see if that's the right thing for you. Does that excite you to build something from zero? From nothing to something. And if it does, do you wake up the next morning wanting to build it and make it better and better? And if you don't, there's nothing wrong with that. But then it's probably a signal that you're not necessarily going to want to do that as a full-time job as a founder. So I think as it is with so many things in life. Testing out, you date before you marry, testing it out, testing out the relationship, testing out, do you like building? Do you like failing? Do you like being a founder? Do you like getting feedback? Because I think there's a lot of very sexy headlines about what happens in entrepreneurship. Those are the companies raising lots of money, companies growing hockey stick growth. Those things are happening, but that isn't the only story. So make sure that the things that will be taking up 23 of your 24 hours a day are things that you love to do, because it is, similar to running a marathon. Building a business is a very long game. You have to have passion and just like in the marathon, you're going to hit points where you have a cramp or you're just not feeling good. That's going to happen. Not only, every week within building a company, multiple hours in a day, that's going to happen. And if you're not passionate about it, it's going to be just too easy to say, this just isn't worth it. So you have to come in with the passion, and you need to test that and prove to yourself that this is something you want to do.
You make a very good point about headlines. And how we chase these entrepreneurial dreams because we read about these techs and the IPOs and this and that. And we all dream about those days. But at the end of the day, like Starbucks didn't become Starbucks overnight, and Apple didn't become Apple overnight. These winners took decades of trial and error to get to the place they wanted to, they ultimately became.
Yeah, there's a number of people have said this line, but this after a big headline, that founder saying this was a 10-year overnight success, because everyone thinks that happened quickly, or they see that athlete who crossed the finish line with a great time in the marathon. They didn't see not only the 4 months of training through the Boston winter to get to that finish line, but the 20 years of training leading up to that. So, the same thing applies. Like you said, Starbucks was not built overnight. That was a lot of training and falling down and getting back up before they started to hit success.
Absolutely. So Jason, an audience member wants to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So one way is if that audience member is an investor or founder, they can see more about Allstage at allstage.co. And outside of that, I am also around on LinkedIn, so you can find me, and I'll call out my handle since there are probably thousands of Jason Burks, but it's JM Burke.
Fantastic. And we'll include those in our show notes. So anyone missed that, just scroll down, you can grab it. Last question for you, Jason. What's the next race on the calendar?
So one of my lifetime goals is to run a marathon in every U.S. state. So right now I'm at 31 states. COVID in 3 years of COVID put a number into continuing to check off new states. But I don't know. I'll be finding something in the fall to do. My last as I mentioned earlier, I live in Boston. So my last state that is drivable is New Jersey. So if I am unable to fly for calendar reasons, then I may need to find one in New Jersey so that I can drive there.
That's awesome. So audience members, if you've got a great race that you love, make sure you chase down Jason on LinkedIn, send him your thoughts on what his next race should be. Jason, this conversation is fantastic. I'm really proud of the work that you're putting in, both on the investor side and also your athletics, and really tying it all back to discipline and health. The message that we've just chatted through is really relevant to the audience who's listening. Thank you for being an example, and please keep investing in those technologies that are going to make us better as a society.
Well, thanks, Greg. Enjoyed the conversation, and love that you're doing this show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. To hear more inspiring stories and strategies around the endurance mindset, be sure to subscribe below or visit us at chiefenduranceofficer.com. Until next time, keep pushing those limits.